My God, how can this be happening now? David Wellington screamed into the phone, his voice echoing through the halls of the 45th floor of Wellington Industries. The Millionaire CEO paced his glass office, watching through the huge windows as the Chinese delegation filed out of 3 black cars parked outside the building. The official translator had just called to cancel the meeting at the last minute, due to a family emergency that couldn't wait. In 15 minutes, the executives of China's largest technology company would be sitting in a conference room finalizing a $200 million contract. $200 million that depended entirely on flawless communication. Mr. Wellington, I've canvassed every translator in town, said Rebecca, his executive assistant, her phone still pressed to her ear. No one is available for a meeting of this size on such short notice. David loosened his Italian tie, sweat beading on his forehead. 20 years of building Wellington Industries, and it could all come crashing down over a language barrier. The Chinese were known for their strict communication protocols. They would never tolerate a meeting conducted via translation apps or impromptu hand gestures. Then from the corner of the room a low, almost whispered voice came. "Excuse me, Mr. Wellington, but I speak fluent Chinese." All eyes turned to Jasmine Parker, 28, who had paused in her cleaning to listen in. She was holding a cleaning cloth and wearing the standard navy blue maintenance uniform. Jasmine had been working on the executive floors for 3 years, always unnoticed, always efficient, always invisible to most of the important people who moved there. The silence that fell was so profound that you could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Rebecca was the first to react, laughing nervously. "Jasmine, this is not a joke. We are talking about a multi-million-dollar international deal." David studied her for a moment, as if he were seeing her for the first time. "Are you fluent in Chinese?" he asked, his voice full of skepticism and a hint of desperation. "Yes, sir," Jasmine answered calmly, meeting his gaze without hesitation. Jasmine was 28 years old, and she never thought that 3 years of cleaning these executive offices would prepare her for this moment. But all the while, as she wiped down conference tables, she listened to every conversation, absorbed every strategy, watched every action these executives took, especially Rebecca. Rebecca's expression quickly turned from amusement to exasperation. "David, you can't be serious! A cleaner running the most important meeting of the year." But David was desperate. There was something in Jasmine's posture, the calm confidence in her voice that made him hesitate. "Prove it," he said sharply. "Say something in Chinese." Jasmine took a deep breath and spoke in perfect Mandarin, her flawless pronunciation echoing around the room. "Women, Hongjin Zijinengzhen, women de Yagua." David was speechless. Even without understanding a word, he could sense the natural fluency, confidence, and authority in her voice. "What did you say?" he asked, still trying to process what he had heard. "That it was an honor to meet you here, and we hope that our cooperation will yield mutually beneficial results," Jasmine translated. "This is a very respectful, standard business greeting in Chinese culture." "David, think about it. What will the Chinese think when they see that you brought a cleaning lady to an executive meeting? You have 20 minutes to clean up, put on something appropriate, and meet me in the conference room. You're completely crazy. When this comes back to haunt you, it will be the end of your career." But David was not listening. For the first time in years, he was about to discover that the most valuable people are the ones who are overlooked right under our noses. What none of them knew was that Jasmine had been preparing for this moment longer than anyone could have imagined, and Rebecca, with all her arrogance and barely concealed prejudices, was about to learn that underestimating someone based on their appearance can be the biggest mistake a person can make. If you enjoy this story of overcoming adversity and are curious about how a cleaning lady can completely change the game in a room full of executives, be sure to subscribe to find out what happens when talent meets an opportunity to shine. 20 minutes later, when Jasmine returned to the conference room, there was an immediate and awkward silence. She had changed out of her uniform and into a black suit borrowed from the receptionist. Simple, but appropriate. Her hair was pulled back into an elegant bun, and she was holding a notepad like any other executive. "Oh my God," Thomas, the CFO, muttered, making no attempt to hide his surprise. "Is this really the same person?" Rebecca did not bother to lower her voice as she whispered to her assistant. "You can put a diamond on coal, but it will still be coal inside." "Jasmine," Rebecca said, "perhaps we should explain to our guests her unique career path within the company." David shot her a warning look, but Rebecca continued. The condescending tone was unmistakable. Jasmine felt a familiar pang of humiliation, the same feeling she had felt since she was 18, when she had to drop out of Howard University midway through her junior year because her diabetic mother had lost her job and needed someone to take care of her and pay her medical bills. I'm just doing my job, Jasmine replied calmly, maintaining her dignity as Mr. Chun watched the exchange with growing confusion. Well, that was interesting, Mr. Chun said. Perhaps next time we should be more transparent about our team's qualifications from the start. David was clearly furious, but before he could respond, Jasmine stood up calmly. Rebecca, she said, her voice quiet but filled with a new authority. Mr. Chin had mentioned something interesting before he left. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? Like what? He said he was impressed by my fluency, but confused by the hierarchical dynamics of the meeting. Jasmine paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. He asked if I could call him later to clarify some cultural aspects of our presentation. Rebecca's expression changed subtly. Which aspects? Mainly why the person responsible for translation was not introduced as the lead negotiator, given that in their culture, whoever speaks the language automatically assumes a position of power. Jasmine smiled softly. He said he wanted to better understand our organizational structure before making a final decision. Rebecca's face swelled slightly as she considered the implications. For 3 years, Jasmine had been invisible, but invisibility, she was about to discover, could be the most powerful weapon of all, especially when you had watched, studied, and prepared for the right moment to emerge from the shadows. What Rebecca didn't know was that every insult, every humiliation, every attempt at sabotage had only fueled something far more dangerous than simple resentment. It was creating a strategist who knew every weakness, every secret, every lie that swirled through those corridors of power. 2 hours after the disastrous meeting, Jasmine was back in her navy blue uniform, pushing her cart through the halls of management. But this time, her every move was calculated. For 3 years, she had mentally mapped every important conversation, every whispered secret, every document carelessly left on desks, especially Rebecca's. It was disgusting, Rebecca commented loudly, loud enough for every executive in the hallway to hear, as she chatted with Jennifer from accounting. At least after that pathetic stunt, today we know where everyone really belongs. Jasmine continued cleaning, but her hands moved automatically and her mind registered every word. Rebecca had no idea that during those 3 years, while cleaning her office, Jasmine had seen personal emails left open, phone conversations about contract manipulation, and, most importantly, those documents that Rebecca had hidden in her bottom drawer. Documents about unfair competition against smaller companies. You know what worries me most? Rebecca continued, clearly bragging to Jennifer. David actually thought a cleaning lady could save a $200 million deal, as if 3 years of cleaning toilets entitled her to sit at the table with real executives. It was then that Jasmine's phone vibrated discreetly. A message from an unknown number, but in Chinese characters she recognized immediately. It was from Mr. Chen. Ms. Parker, I would like to speak with you in person about our company and your future opportunities. Can we meet tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning at the Mandarin Cafe on 42nd Street? I have a proposition that might interest you. Jasmine's heart began to beat faster. It wasn't just about translation. It was about much more. During the meeting, she realized that Mr. Chun was assessing not only her linguistic fluency, but also her business acumen, her poise, her dignity under pressure. That evening, in her small Brooklyn apartment, Jasmine opened a file on her computer that she had been creating for 2 years. This wasn't paranoia. This was preparation. Every company has its dirty secrets, and 3 years of invisibility in the corridors of power had given her access to information that could shake the foundations. The file, titled Wellington Industries Inconsistencies, contained 63 pages of carefully compiled evidence, printed emails Rebecca thought she'd deleted, call logs recorded by the security system when she worked on weekends, and, most importantly, photographs of documents proving how Rebecca had deliberately sabotaged 3 contracts with black-run companies over the past 18 months. Jasmine had seen Rebecca lie to clients, take credit for projects designed by others, and, most importantly, use her position to block the advancement of employees she felt did not fit the company's image. The next day, at 10 o'clock sharp, Jasmine arrived at the Mandarin Cafe, dressed in a simple but elegant outfit purchased with her early college savings. Mr. Chun was already waiting, accompanied by an elegant woman who introduced herself as Lisa Wong, the group's Vice President of International Development. Miss Parker, Mr. Chin began in English, but then naturally switched to Mandarin. Yesterday I observed not only your linguistic fluency, but something far more valuable, your composure under undue pressure. Lisa leaned forward. Our company is expanding into North America. We need someone who understands both Chinese culture and American business dynamics. Someone who has seen how business really works from the inside. And someone, Mr. Chin added, with a knowing smile, For 2 hours, Jasmine spoke freely about marketing strategies, cultural differences in negotiations, and especially how American companies often underestimated the sophistication of Asian investors. She casually mentioned a few inconsistencies she had noticed in competing companies without naming names. As Lisa handed her a business card, Jasmine read, "Mr. Chin said, standing up. Sorry, I'm late. Was finishing up some important information for the meeting." "With all due respect, David, I don't understand why she's here. This is an executive meeting." "She's here," David replied coolly, "because the Chinese delegation specifically requested her presence to clarify the allegations they've made." Jasmine opened her laptop with calculated movements. "Mr. Chun approached me yesterday afternoon with some specific concerns about Wellington Industries' contracting practices. Apparently, they found evidence of collusion and sabotage against competing companies." "That's absurd!" Rebecca exploded, her voice rising an octave. "What evidence does a cleaning lady have about management's work?" The smile that spread across Jasmine's face was gentle but devastating. "That's the kind of evidence you gather when you're invisible for 3 years and people talk to you as if you don't exist." Rebecca's expression changed subtly. The first glimmer of real fear flickered in her eyes. Jasmine plugged her laptop into the rejector. The first image that appeared was an internal email from Rebecca to a client from 6 months ago. Sent to Mills Corporation, it contained confidential information about offerings from the Johnson Company, our direct competitor at the time. The silence in the room was deafening. Rebecca tried to intervene, but Jasmine persisted. This second document showed how Rebecca had intentionally inflated the costs of projects led by Black and Latino employees, forcing cancellations that she then attributed to the incompetence of those responsible. Spreadsheets with obvious changes, internal emails, and security records appeared on the screen. For 3 years, Jasmine had meticulously documented every discrepancy. "This is a setup!" Rebecca screamed, jumping to her feet. "She's fabricating evidence to get back at me because I exposed her true position in the company." Jasmine remained seated, calmly. "Mr. David, the recording I'm about to play was made by the company's security system 8 months ago." Rebecca's voice boomed over the room's speakers. "We can't have people like that thinking they belong in the boardroom. This is about maintaining proper standards in the company." Rebecca's face instantly paled. She remembered this conversation, a private conversation with Thomas about keeping the company free of unsuitable elements. "And this," Jasmine continued, playing the new recording, "is from 2 weeks ago, when Rebecca deliberately instructed her secretary not to forward calls to candidates with names that sounded too ethnic. One of the directors, Mr. Johnson, a Black man in his 60s, who had been with the company for 15 years, leaned forward, his expression stern. "Rebecca, is this true? This is out of context." Rebecca stammered, sweat beginning to form on her forehead. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under to uphold company standards." "Company standards," Jasmine said softly, "include ethics, integrity, and compliance with federal discrimination laws, all of which have been systematically violated over the past 18 months. David turned to Rebecca, his face stony. "You have 30 seconds to explain why you shouldn't be fired for cause and not reported to the district attorney." Rebecca looked around the table desperately, searching for an ally, a sympathetic face. She found only looks of disapproval and disgust. She whispered, her voice shaking. David interrupted with authority. The silence that followed was absolute. Rebecca remained standing, swaying slightly, realizing that her 15-year career had ended in a matter of minutes. David continued. He paused. As security escorted Rebecca out, she gave Jasmine one last venomous look. "You may win today, but it doesn't change who you really are." Jasmine met her gaze with unwavering calm. "You're right. I am who I've always been. A person who watches, learns, and acts when the time comes. The difference is, now I'm finally where I was always supposed to be." 3 hours later, when the meeting was over and Jasmine was officially promoted to her new position, David pulled her aside. "How did you do that?" 3 years of evidence, records, documents. Jasmine smiled for the first time in days. When you're treated like furniture, people forget that furniture has eyes and ears. Rebecca had underestimated the power of invisibility and overestimated the value of her own arrogance. In that moment, looking out over her new office overlooking Manhattan, Jasmine realized that the best revenge was not to destroy Rebecca, but to create something greater than she could ever imagine. The future that awaited her would be written in her own hand, and this time no one would be able to erase her signature. 6 months later, Jasmine Parker sat in her new office on the 38th floor of Wellington Industries, reviewing the contracts she had signed with Asian companies. Her glass desk was piled high with documents in Mandarin, Cantonese, and English, negotiations that had already earned the company $400 million in new contracts. Jasmine. The South Korean delegation has arrived, announced Jennifer, who was now her personal assistant. They want to meet the man who has tripled our business in Asia in just 6 months. Through the window, Jasmine could see the city she had once observed only as an invisible cleaning lady. Now, as Director of International Relations, she was one of Manhattan's most respected executives. Her $300,000 annual salary allowed her mother to get the best treatment for her diabetes, and she was able to complete her master's degree through Columbia's executive program. "What about the Forbes meeting next week?" Jennifer asked, scanning her busy schedule. "Confirmed," Jasmine replied, adjusting the navy blazer she was wearing. "Not out of obligation, but by choice. They want to talk about my inclusion in the list of the most influential young female CEOs in the country." Across town, Rebecca sat in the small apartment she'd rented in Queens after being evicted from her Manhattan condo. Medical bills for psychological therapy were stacked on the coffee table, along with dozens of rejection letters from companies where she had applied for jobs. A federal investigation into her discriminatory practices had resulted in a personal fine of $50,000 and a 5-year ban from holding management positions at companies with federal contracts. Her name had appeared in every major business newspaper as an example of toxic leadership, making her virtually irrelevant. That morning she saw a photo of Jasmine on the cover of Businessweek magazine, smiling confidently next to Chinese executives under the headline, "The Translator Who Revolutionized International Business." The irony hit her like a slap in the face. Back at Wellington Industries, David called a meeting of the full board to announce exceptional half-year results. "Jasmine Parker didn't just save our deal with the Chinese," he told the room. "She opened doors to markets we never thought we could penetrate." Mr. Johnson, the same black director who had witnessed Rebecca's downfall, stood up to give a short speech. "In my 40 years in corporate America, I have rarely seen such a dramatic transformation as Jasmine has brought to our company. She has proven that true talent has no color, knows no class, and certainly does not hide behind prejudice." The audience applauded enthusiastically as Jasmine sat modestly, remembering the woman who had cleaned that very same conference room just 7 months earlier. That evening, in her renovated Upper East Side apartment, Jasmine received a call from her mother. Jasmine answered, smiling. "You always told me that people can try to put us down, but they can never put us down because of what we know and what we can do." During a television interview, Jasmine was asked about Rebecca and whether she resented the way she had been treated. Her answer was precise and elegant. "Rebecca gave me the greatest gift anyone could ever receive. She showed me exactly who I did not want to become. Her arrogance and prejudice taught me that true strength comes from supporting others, not from stepping on them." 3 weeks later, Jasmine was at Howard University, her alma mater, announcing a scholarship program she had created for low-income students forced to interrupt their studies due to financial hardship. "No one should have to choose between caring for their family and pursuing their dreams," she told an audience of 500 emotional students. The Second Chance program, funded in part by her own salary, had already approved 20 full scholarships for the coming semester. Rebecca, watching the ceremony online from her small apartment, turned off her computer with tears in her eyes. For the first time in months, these weren't tears of self-pity, but what was beginning to feel like genuine remorse. Meanwhile, Jasmine was back in the office where 3 years earlier she'd pushed a cleaning cart down the same corridors. Now, the younger executives were greeting her with respect. Secretaries were asking her for career advice, and most important, she was mentoring 5 other back-office employees who had shown untapped potential. "You know what the most fascinating thing about this whole thing is?" David asked Jasmine in a private conversation. "You could have used all this information about Rebecca to destroy her personally, but you chose only to expose her professional misdeeds." Jasmine smiled softly. "The best revenge is never to destroy someone. It's creating something so extraordinary that everything they tried to do against you becomes irrelevant." Jasmine Parker's story proved that true talent, unwavering dignity, and quiet preparation can overcome any prejudice or injustice. She turned 3 years of invisibility into the greatest asset of her career, showing that sometimes the most influential people are the ones you don't even notice by watching, learning, and preparing to shine. Rebecca tried to put her down based on prejudice and arrogance, but ended up being the architect of her own destruction. Jasmine taught the corporate world that true leadership comes not from titles or privilege, but from the ability to see potential where others see only limitations. If this story of overcoming adversity and seeing justice done has touched your heart, Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that talent and dignity always find their way to the top in the end, no matter how many obstacles stand in their way.